Being a parent means putting your kids first. But is there a limit to sacrifice? I'm a husband, a father, and once I thought my wife was selfish. She refused to let our 4-year-old daughter join a soccer team just because she wanted one day off for herself. I was frustrated, maybe even angry, but what she told me later completely changed how I saw things. Maybe I was wrong. Or maybe love isn't about giving everything away, but knowing where to draw the line. Saturdays used to mean something different before kids. Back then, my wife and I could sleep in, grab coffee from our favorite spot downtown, maybe stroll through the farmer's market if the weather was nice. Life felt wide open, but now, Saturdays are survival. We have 2 kids, already. Our oldest, Emma, just turned 4, and our little one, Noah, isn't even 2 yet. And on top of that, my wife is 5 months pregnant with our 3rd dot. Our house feels like it's always on the edge of chaos. Toys scattered across the living room like landmines. Dishes stacked in the sink waiting to be washed. Laundry baskets spilling over like they've given up on us. And my wife, God bless her, she looks exhausted most of the time. She's a preschool teacher, so she spends her weekdays wrangling other people's kids, only to come home to wrangle our own. On top of that, she struggles with narcolepsy, which means her energy tank runs out faster than most people's. She hides it well, but I can see it in her eyes, in the way her shoulders slump when she finally sits down at the end of the day. So for her, Saturday is sacred. It's the only day she doesn't have to answer to a schedule, the only day she can maybe catch her breath. But for me, Saturday became the day I wanted something else. It started innocently enough. Emma, our 4-year-old, is full of energy. She's the kind of kid who runs everywhere instead of walking, who talks to strangers at the grocery store like they're long-lost friends, who sings to herself while building Lego towers taller than she is. And I thought, maybe she'd like soccer, not because I expect her to be the next Mia Hamm, or even because I love the sport myself, but I wanted her to have a chance to be around other kids, to run, to learn what it means to be on a team. To me, it seemed simple. Sign her up for a local kids' soccer program. 1 practice a week, 1 game on the weekend. It wasn't about winning. It was about giving her a space outside of home to grow. So I brought it up to my wife one night after dinner. "Hey," I said, clearing plates from the table, "what do you think about signing Emma up for soccer? Just a little league for kids her age. I think she'd love it." I expected her to smile, maybe even get excited. But instead, she froze. Her fork hovered mid-air. She looked at me with this tired, almost incredulous expression. "Soccer? For Emma, she's 4. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep it light. "They start young. It's just for fun, nothing serious." But her face tightened. "And when would this be?" "Saturday mornings, probably. A couple hours tops." And that's when she put the fork down. Her voice wasn't angry, it was firm, steady. The kind of tone she uses when she means business. "Saturday is the only day I have to breathe," she said. "If you're gone, I'm here, alone, with 2 kids and a 3rd on the way. I can't do it." I remember standing there, dish in my hand, stunned. "It's just 1 morning," I said. "I think it'd be good for Emma. She'd make friends. She'd learn to play with others. I don't care if it's 1 morning," she cut in. "I'm exhausted. I need that time." Her words hit harder than I expected, because in my mind, I wasn't asking for much. I wasn't asking her to take Emma. I was volunteering to do it. I'd be the one at the field. She could stay home, but to her, it wasn't just about the logistics. It was about what my absence meant. More weight on her shoulders. More hours where she was left managing everything else. And truthfully, I didn't have a comeback. Because she wasn't wrong. Asterisk, here's where things got messy. When I told my parents about the idea, they were all in. Of course, you should sign her up, my mum said. Kids need that kind of activity. It's good for them. And it's not fair if she misses out just because her mum doesn't feel like it. That last part stung. My parents love my wife, but they don't always understand her struggles, especially with her health. To them, she looks fine. To them, being tired is just part of being a parent. And I'll admit, a part of me agreed with them. I wanted Emma to have opportunities. I wanted to be the kind of dad who encourages his kids to try new things. But then I thought about my wife's family. When I mentioned it casually to her sister, she just shrugged. She's 4, she said. She's got years ahead of her to try soccer, dance, gymnastics, whatever. Don't rush. If your wife needs a break, give her one. And suddenly, I was stuck between two worlds, my parents urging me to push forward, her family telling me to back off, and me standing in the middle, torn between what I thought was best for my kid and what I knew was necessary for my wife. Asterisk. The conversation came to a head one Saturday morning when Emma herself overheard us. She tugged at my shirt and asked, "Daddy, can I play soccer?" Her big brown eyes lit up at the idea, and I felt my chest tighten. How could I say no to that? So later that week, despite the tension, I signed her up. When I told my wife, she sighed. Not angrily, just this heavy, defeated sound. "Fine," she said. "But listen to me. I'm not wrong for needing rest. I know it makes me look selfish, but if I burn out, nobody in this house wins. I love our kids, but I have limits, and if I don't protect them, who will?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to say she was being unfair, but the truth is, she wasn't. She was right. I realized in that moment that saying no isn't always selfish. Sometimes it's the most selfless thing you can do. Because by guarding her own strength, she was protecting our family from the fallout of her exhaustion. Asterisk. Emma got to play soccer. She loved it. She laughed, she ran, she stumbled. She scored a goal once and celebrated like she'd won the World Cup. And seeing her out there made me proud, but it also made me see my wife differently. She wasn't being stubborn. She wasn't trying to crush Emma's joy. She was trying to survive, to keep herself healthy enough to be the mum and wife she wanted to be, and me. I realized that being a parent isn't about sacrificing until there's nothing left of you. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to step back, when to draw boundaries, when to admit that love doesn't always mean giving everything. Sometimes love means saying no. Saturday mornings in our house were a mix of chaos and comfort. On one hand, it was the only day of the week without an alarm clock blaring at 6 a.m. On the other. Our two little ones, Lila, who was 4, and Jonah, not yet 2, had no concept of weekend. They woke when they wanted to, demanded cartoons, cereal, attention, and sometimes all 3 at once. I had imagined Saturday mornings as a chance to bond as a family, to maybe sneak in a new routine, like taking Lila to soccer practice. But for my wife, Claire, Saturdays meant something else entirely: survival. She was 5 months pregnant, working full-time as a preschool teacher, and struggling with narcolepsy. Fatigue wasn't just an occasional complaint for her. It was a constant companion. Sometimes I'd find her asleep on the couch, with toys scattered around her, our toddler poking her face. Sometimes she'd fight it off with coffee, but even then, her eyelids drooped. So when I brought up soccer lessons for Leela, Claire's reaction wasn't exactly enthusiastic. "I'm exhausted," she told me. "If you're not home on Saturdays, who's going to carry the weight? I need at least one day where I can rest, clean, or just breathe." I wanted to argue, to remind her that Lila needed to socialize, to learn teamwork, to get outside and run around with kids her age. But looking at Claire hair tied in a loose bun, eyes shadowed with fatigue, one hand resting on her growing belly, felt the words catch in my throat. Asterisk, of course. When I mentioned the soccer idea to my parents, they were thrilled. "It'll be great for her," my mum said. "Kids need activity, and it's not fair if she misses out just because you're busy. She'll make friends, learn discipline. Don't let her fall behind." My dad, never one to sugarcoat, added, "You need to toughen up, son. Parenting isn't about convenience. Take her to soccer. Claire will manage." Women have been raising kids and handling the house for centuries. Their words stung. Not because I didn't want Leela to play soccer, but because they made Claire sound lazy, selfish. And I knew she single quotes to Claire worked harder than anyone I knew. She poured herself into her classroom during the week, then came home to pour whatever energy she had left into our kids. By Friday night, she was drained. Saturdays weren't luxury. They were necessity. Asterisk, on the flip side. Claire's parents were more relaxed. Her mum said gently, for is still so young, "If she doesn't start soccer this year, she can start next year, or the year after. Let's not rush her into activities just because it feels urgent." Her sister laughed. "Honestly, she'll probably just pick dandelions on the field anyway. At 4, soccer's more about snack time and running in circles." And maybe they were right. But deep inside, I felt this urgency. Maybe it wasn't about Leela at all, maybe it was about me. I wanted to feel like I was giving her a head start, like I wasn't failing as a dad. Asterisk, in the end, after weeks of back and forth, Claire agreed to let Leela try soccer. She wasn't exactly happy about it. One evening, as she folded laundry with heavy movements, she said, "Look, maybe I'm selfish, but I have to protect my energy. If I collapse, no one wins. Not you, not the kids, not me. So if we're doing this, you're handling it. Drop-offs, pickups, snacks, uniforms, all of it. I can't add one more thing to my plate." Her words hit me hard. I'd been so focused on what I thought was good for Lila that I forgot about what was necessary for Claire. Her boundaries weren't selfish, they were survival. Asterisk, that Saturday. I loaded Lila into the car while Claire stayed home with Jonah. The soccer field buzzed with chaos. Dozens of 4-year-olds ran in circles, some chasing balls, some chasing butterflies, some clinging to their parents' legs. Coaches shouted instructions that went mostly ignored. Parents sat in folding chairs, sipping coffee, cheering, laughing. Leela clung to my hand at first, her big brown eyes wide. She wore the tiny shin guards and cleats we'd picked out, her ponytail bouncing nervously. "Daddy, what if I'm not good?" she whispered. I knelt down. "Sweetheart, you don't have to be good. You just have to have fun." She smiled, a little braver, and jogged toward the cluster of kids. I sat on the sidelines, heart swelling. For the first time, I felt like I'd made the right call. She was out there, part of something bigger, learning in a way that no toy or TV show at home could teach her. Asterisk when we returned. Lila was flushed and buzzing with energy, clutching a tiny participation sticker the coach had handed out. She ran inside shouting, "Mummy." I kicked the ball. I kicked it really far. Claire looked up from the couch, her face tired but glowing at the sound of Lila's excitement. "That's wonderful, baby," she said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." In that moment, I saw the balance. Lila got her adventure, her chance to explore. Claire got her much-needed rest, and me. I got a new understanding of what parenting really meant. Asterisk. Parenting wasn't about giving 100% of yourself until nothing remained. It wasn't about saying yes to every opportunity just because it looked good on paper. Sometimes, love meant compromise. It meant knowing when to push and when to step back. It meant respecting your partner's limits while still encouraging your children to grow. Claire had taught me that. By saying no, she wasn't rejecting our daughter. She was protecting all of us. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most loving thing a mother could do. Weekend mornings on repeat after the very first practice. Lila was so thrilled that she spent the entire week talking about it. "Daddy, I kicked the ball so well. Did you see? I want to play again next Saturday." Every time she mentioned it, joy spread across my chest. I imagined years ahead. Maybe she'd run faster, grow stronger, and perhaps even find a passion of her own. But for Claire, that excitement wasn't as visible. On Saturday mornings, I was bustling around, packing tiny cleats, socks, a water bottle, a little sun hat. Lila buzzed beside me, chattering non-stop. Meanwhile, Claire sat on the couch, one hand bracing her heavy 5-month belly, the other keeping Jonah from toppling over his box of Legos. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, her eyes ringed with fatigue. That scene repeated itself every weekend. It made me feel two things at once: sympathy for my wife, but also a faint irritation. I wanted her to share this spark of excitement with me. Instead, she just sighed and said, "Go ahead, just watch her closely." The little field at the park soon became familiar. Rows of minivans lined the street. Dads in baseball caps and moms with folding chairs and Starbucks cups clustered along the sidelines. Dozens of kids in oversized jerseys, socks pulled past their knees, ran around like a swarm of bees. I struck up small conversations with other dads. One bragged about how his son had played 2 seasons already and was kicking stronger. Another laughed and said, "At this age, you can't expect much. Just let them run around and giggle." I nodded, but inside I still swelled with pride whenever Lila managed to nudge the ball in the right direction. Sometimes she didn't touch the ball at all. She'd just chase after her friends, laughing wildly, and instead of disappointment, I found it adorable. I began to realize soccer wasn't about skill. It was about joy. For Lila and for me, too. But that joy didn't erase the pressure at home. Every Saturday morning, while I left with Lila, Jonah screamed and cried because he wanted to follow his sister. Claire struggled to calm him while balancing her belly, fixing breakfast, tidying up. When I returned 2 hours later, the house was in chaos, toys scattered everywhere, dishes stacked high in the sink, and Claire stretched out on the couch, eyes closed in sheer exhaustion. One time I muttered without thinking, "I was gone for just 2 hours, and the house looks like a tornado hit it." Claire turned, eyes weary but voice sharp. Why don't you try staying here with Jonah? With this belly, while cleaning and chasing him around at the same time. I froze. I knew I had crossed a line. Yet a bitter thought lingered. Does my joy with Lila have to come at the cost of her frustration? Another evening, I told Claire proudly she scored a goal today. Everyone clapped for her. Claire smiled faintly and said, "That's good." As long as she's happy, her short reply landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted her to beam with pride, to celebrate with me. But she simply turned away to wash dishes. That invisible gap between us seemed to widen a little more. One night, full of enthusiasm, I suggested signing Lila up for another season. Claire set her bowl down harder than necessary. Are you planning to spend every weekend like this? While I stay home, pregnant and exhausted, juggling Jonah. Do you think that's fair? Her words stung. I knew she wasn't wrong, but I also felt accused for trying to do something good for our daughter. My frustration boiled over. You're being selfish. I just want what's best for Lalart. Let her be active, to make friends. And all you ever think about is yourself. Claire didn't raise her voice. She just stared at me, her eyes glistening. Then she said quietly, "If you think I'm selfish, then maybe you've never really understood me." Her words dropped like a weight, echoing in the silence of the kitchen. The next Saturday, as I sat on a folding chair watching Lila dart across the field, a woman next to me struck up a conversation. She looked older, calmer. "First time out here." "Just a few weeks," I replied. "It's fun, isn't it? Just remember, don't let this turn into pressure. Kids this young, what matters is joy. And for us parents, it's balance." She said it casually, then turned away. But the words lingered, like an arrow hitting its mark. That night, long after Claire and Jonah had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the dim living room. The house was still messy, faintly smelling of dinner. I thought about Claire's tired eyes, about Leela's carefree laughter on the field, about the stranger's advice, and slowly it dawned on me. I had been using soccer as proof of being a good father. I wanted validation through my daughter's tiny victories. But in doing so, I had overlooked the silent sacrifice of the woman holding everything together behind the scenes. Claire wasn't opposing me out of selfishness. She was fighting for strengths to stay a mother, a wife, a teacher without collapsing the next morning, while Claire was making Jonah's milk. I stepped closer and said quietly, "I'm sorry for calling you selfish. You've been carrying too much, and I didn't see it. I get it now." Claire looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Then her expression softened. "I'm sorry too. I know I don't always show it, but I'm proud of her too. I just get too tired sometimes to share it the way you do." That one sentence lifted a fog inside me. From that day forward, I changed my approach. Soccer wasn't a mission to prove myself anymore. It was just a chance for Leela to laugh and for me to spend time with her. At home, I started pitching in more cleaning, cooking, wrangling Jonah so Claire could rest. I also began to see her differently, not as someone holding our daughter back, but as the backbone keeping this family steady. I finally understood. Love doesn't always mean sacrificing yourself until nothing's left. Sometimes love is about boundaries. Sometimes it's about stepping back so everyone can stand strong together. It was early March, and though spring was inching closer, the air still carried that bitter chill of winter. Bare branches rattled outside our windows, and our little house seemed to huddle against the wind. Inside, Claire was heavy with pregnancy. Entering her final weeks, her belly had grown so large that every step looked like an effort, her hand instinctively resting underneath for support. She would sigh often, her breaths shallow, her movements slower, heavier. At night, she tossed and turned, unable to find comfort, her sighs escaping in frustrated bursts. I would lie awake, listening, wishing I could shoulder even half of her weight, her exhaustion. Mornings were the hardest. I'd stumble into the kitchen, still half asleep, to find Claire already moving about, Jonah clinging to her leg while she flipped eggs in the skillet. Lila would be at the counter, pouting about her hair, insisting it had to be braided a certain way she'd seen a friend wear it. Claire would be balancing it all, cooking, soothing Jonah, and trying to satisfy Lila's demands, while her swollen belly strained under her shirt. Sometimes I'd step in, reaching for the spatula. "Let me do it. You sit down, rest." Claire would shoot me a tired little smile. "If I let you cook, we'll all be eating lunch for breakfast." She said it like a joke, but I could hear the fatigue behind it. She didn't want to let go of control, not because she didn't trust me, but because her whole world felt like it was threatening to spiral. Cooking breakfast was one of the few things she could still manage, and I understood, but it still broke me a little every time. It happened late one evening in early April. I was sitting on Lila's bed, reading her a story about dragons and princesses, when Claire's voice called from the hallway, sharp, urgent, "Babe, I think it's time." I turned, and there she was, gripping the edge of the dresser, her face pale, her hand trembling. The floor beneath her was wet. Her water had broken. My heart leapt into my throat. We scrambled. I called the neighbors to watch Lila and Jonah. We grabbed the hospital bag that had been packed for weeks and rushed into the car. Claire's breaths came in harsh bursts, filling the silence of the ride. I gripped the wheel with one hand, her fingers with the other. The world outside the windshield blurred, streetlights, signs, the black ribbon of road, while inside, all I could think about was her, us, and the tiny life we were about to meet. The labor stretched through the night. I paced the hallway outside the delivery room, back and forth, my palms slick, my chest tight. I caught snippets of nurses' voices, the squeak of shoes against linoleum, the constant beeping of machines. Time warped, every minute felt endless, every sound amplified. Then suddenly, the cry, that sharp, unmistakable, miraculous cry. Tears blurred my vision as a nurse appeared, smiling. "Congratulations, Dad, it's a boy." When I entered the room, Claire looked drained, hair plastered to her forehead, her face pale and damp with sweat. Yet she managed the faintest smile as she cradled a tiny bundle in her arms. I kissed her forehead, whispering through my tears, "You did it. I'm so proud of you." Her lips curved in a weary grin. "Here we go again," she murmured. Bringing a newborn home for the third time was nothing like the first or even the second. It was chaos. Pure, unrelenting chaos. The baby cried at all hours, a shrill, insistent wail that pierced through walls, through sleep, through nerves. Jonah, at 2, became jealous, demanding to be held every time I picked up the baby. Lila, only 4, started asking heartbreaking questions. "Daddy, do you still love me? Or do you only love the baby now?" Claire was fragile. One moment she was tender, rocking the baby with tears of joy in her eyes. The next, she was breaking down over something small, a missing burp cloth, spilled milk, Jonah's tantrums. I recognized it. The storm of hormones, exhaustion, and despair that doctors call baby blues. Still, knowing the term didn't make it easier. Watching the woman I loved collapse under invisible weight was agonizing. I tried to pick up the slack, changing diapers, rocking the baby at 2 a.m., making dinner with Jonah, clinging to my leg. There were nights when I stood in the kitchen, bouncing the newborn in one arm while stirring a pot with the other, sweat running down my back. Claire would sit slumped in the living room, whispering, "I feel useless," like I'm failing. I'd kneel beside her, pressing my forehead to hers. "You gave me a son. You gave this family everything. You are not failing. You are everything." But my words often bounced off the fog she was trapped in, and I was left wondering if they even mattered. The house felt heavy, the air tense. Lila grew more withdrawn. She sulked, acting out, complaining that I no longer played soccer with her in the yard. Jonah threw tantrums daily, tossing toys, spilling juice, screaming just to be noticed. One afternoon, I heard crying outside. I rushed to the yard to find Lila sitting in the grass, hugging her knees, her soccer ball lying forgotten beside her. "I hate the baby," she sobbed. "Since he came, you don't play with me anymore." Her words crushed me. I gathered her into my arms, whispering apologies, my throat tight. But inside, I was panicking. Was I losing her? That night, when the kids were finally asleep, Claire and I sat in the dim living room. The baby monitor glowed faintly beside us. "We're losing control, aren't we?" Claire's voice was hoarse, almost broken. I couldn't deny it. I nodded, and the silence that followed was terrifying. Stress fermented into arguments. "You're always tired. Always snapping at me," I blurted one evening. "I work all day, come home, and then it's chaos. Do you think I'm not exhausted too?" Claire's face flared red, her eyes glistening. "Do you think I get to rest? I'm here every hour, every day, trapped in this house with screaming kids and endless chores. I can't even pee without someone crying. You only see your own exhaustion. You never see mine." Her words sliced me open. I wanted to defend myself, to explain. But instead, I sat there, stunned, angry, silent. We ended that night on opposite ends of the couch, the space between us wider than ever. A week later. Desperate, I grabbed coffee with an old friend. Mark. He had 3 kids too, a few years ahead of me in the parenting game. When I unloaded my frustrations, he chuckled, shaking his head. "You're in the trenches, man. It's brutal. My wife and I almost divorced when our 3rd was born." I leaned in. "So, how did you make it through?" He shrugged. "No magic answer. We stopped pretending we could do it all perfectly. We let the dishes sit sometimes. We lowered the bar. Most importantly, we remembered we're on the same team. If you start seeing your wife as the enemy, the team loses. Period." His words sank deep. That's exactly what I'd been doing, treating Claire like an opponent instead of a partner. That night. I sat next to Claire while she nursed the baby. My voice shook, but I said it anyway. "I'm sorry. I've made you feel alone. But I want us to be a team, not two people fighting each other." She stared at me, silent, eyes glistening. Then, slowly, she nodded. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm sorry too. I've said things that hurt you. I'm so tired." In her gaze, I saw a flicker of the softness I'd missed. It wasn't a fix, not a miracle, but it was something. The following weeks were still grueling. Nights filled with crying, Phoebe wailing, Jonah howling in protest, Leela begging for a bedtime story. I often felt like I was being torn into 3 pieces. There were nights Claire sat on the edge of the bed, hollow-eyed, whispering, "I don't know if I can survive this." I would pull her close, my own exhaustion spilling over, and whisper back, "We'll get through." Not perfectly, but together. It wasn't a promise carved in stone, just a fragile thread of belief we both clung to. One Sunday morning, as sunlight streamed through the blinds, Leela burst into our room with her soccer ball. "Daddy, come play with me in the yard." I hesitated. The baby had just fallen asleep. Jonah was stirring in his crib. But then Claire, looking at me with tired eyes, gave a small smile. "Go, she needs you. I'll handle the boys for a bit." So I went. I kicked the ball back and forth with my daughter, her laughter ringing out across the yard. And in that golden morning light, I realized something. Life would never stop being messy, exhausting, overwhelming. But moments like this, Lila's laughter, Claire's smile, a baby's sigh, were why we fought through the chaos. We didn't magically fix everything. The house was still loud, messy, unpredictable. But slowly, we began to hold on tighter to each other. I don't know what storms lie ahead, but I've learned that family isn't built on perfection. It's built on endurance, on showing up, on reminding each other that, no matter how bad it gets, we are a team. Saturday morning came with a pale sun breaking through a blanket of clouds. The lights scattered across the streets, touching rooftops and tree branches with a muted glow. I loaded the car, carrying a small water bottle, a pair of tiny sneakers, and the shiny new soccer ball I had bought for my daughter. She was only 4, and the ball seemed almost comically large in her little hands as she clutched it tightly. My wife slid into the back seat, moving slower than usual, one hand supporting her 5-month pregnant belly. Our toddler was cradled against her, his head resting on her shoulder, already half asleep despite the morning bustle. I glanced in the rearview mirror. I could see the fatigue on her face, the quiet shadows under her eyes. But there was something else to accept. She hadn't wanted this. She had resisted, argued, even begged me to reconsider. Yet here she was, choosing to come along, to give me and our daughter a chance. I felt a tightness in my chest, relief, gratitude, a flicker of guilt, and in the mirror, I caught the bright, curious eyes of my little girl as she turned the ball over in her lap, as if imagining what it would be like to run with it. She didn't yet understand what awaited her, but the spark was there. A spark that made every disagreement, every tense silence at home, feel almost worth it, almost asterisk. The soccer field was smaller than I expected, a patch of green tucked behind a community center, framed by chain-link fences and a row of bleachers. Yet it was alive. Dozens of children buzzed with energy, their tiny jerseys hanging loosely on their frames, sneakers squeaking on the grass. Parents clustered around the sidelines, some with cameras ready, others chatting, sipping coffee, or already cheering. As we stepped onto the field, my daughter's grip on my hand tightened. Her eyes darted from the kids, to the coach, to the ball at her feet. The noise overwhelmed her. I felt her hesitation ripple through her small body. I crouched down, my voice low and steady. "You don't have to be perfect today," I said. "Just try. Run a little. Kick the ball once. If you're having fun, that's all that matters." She looked at me, her lower lip trembling. Then she nodded. When I stood up, I caught sight of my wife a few steps away. She was holding our toddler against her hip, her other hand absent-mindedly rubbing her swollen belly. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between pride and apprehension. She wasn't smiling, but there was a softness, a willingness, that hadn't been there before. The whistle blew, and the kids stumbled onto the field like a pack of puppies. My daughter hesitated at first, then shuffled forward, chasing the ball as it rolled by. She ran 2 steps before tumbling forward onto the grass. Her palms smacked the dirt, her little knees scraped. Her face crumpled, tears welling instantly. I started to rush to her, but someone else moved faster. The coacher, middle-aged man with kind eyes and a patient smile, knelt beside her. His voice was calm, warm, unshaken. "Hey, that's okay," he said gently. "Everybody falls. You know what the best part is? You get to stand up and try again." She blinked at him, torn between crying and listening. Then she looked past him, straight at me. Her eyes asked the question, "Am I really okay?" I nodded firmly. "You're okay. You can do it." The coach extended his hand. She hesitated, then placed her tiny fingers in his palm and pulled herself up. And then she tried again. Her steps were clumsy, her kicks uneven. But when the ball rolled her way and she tapped it forward, a laugh burst out of her chest, bright and unrestrained. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh like that in weeks. I looked at my wife, just in time to see her lips curve into a faint smile, a real one, fleeting but real. And suddenly the weight in my chest eased. Later. As the kids fumbled through a drill, I sat on the bleachers next to my wife. Our toddler slept soundly in her arms, his soft breath rising and falling against her shoulder. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just watched our daughter run awkwardly after the ball, sometimes tripping, sometimes laughing, sometimes freezing altogether. Finally, I said quietly, "I know you're exhausted. I know this makes things harder for you, but watching her like this, it feels worth it." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on our daughter, tracing every movement, every stumble. Then she exhaled. I think maybe I was too focused on myself, but I was scared too. Scared you wouldn't see how much of the load I carry, that you'd keep asking for more when I have nothing left to give. Her words stung not because they were unfair, but because they were true. I turned to her, met her gaze. "You're right. I haven't seen it all, but I see it now. And I promise I'll be here more. Not just for her. For you." Her hand was cool when I reached for it, fingers thin and trembling slightly. She didn't pull away. One Saturday became 2, then 3, then 6. It wasn't always easy. Some mornings my daughter refused to put on her sneakers, whining that she wanted to stay home. Some days the field was muddy, her clothes stained with grass and dirt. Other times she fell and cried, demanding to quit. But slowly, steadily, she began to change. She ran faster. She laughed louder. She learned the names of other kids, calling them out across the field. She chased the ball with determination, her hair bouncing wildly as she ran. And with each week, our family found a rhythm. I took on more of the preparation, packing snacks, dressing our toddler, driving us all there. My wife began to relax. She no longer saw these mornings as another burden, but as a ritual, a chance to step out of the endless cycle of work, chores, and exhaustion. She still tired easily. her illness never far from the surface. But she smiled more. She let herself breathe, and I learned to carry my share of the weight. One evening, after the kids had been tucked into bed, we sat on the porch. Autumn was settling in, the air cool and crisp, the scent of fallen leaves drifting on the wind. We didn't talk for a long time. The silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. Finally, I broke it, you know. I used to think being a good parent meant giving everything, no matter the cost. Sacrifice until there's nothing left. She tilted her head, listening, but now I see. Sometimes love means saying enough. If you hadn't drawn the line, if you hadn't insisted on protecting yourself, we might have lost more than we gained. She smiled faintly, her hand brushing mine. And if you hadn't held firm, she wouldn't have these mornings, these memories. Maybe we were both right, in our own way. Her words settled deep inside me. She was right. We had both fought for what we believed was best. And somehow, between the tension and the compromise, we had found balance. This story isn't really about soccer. It's about balance. About learning when to push forward and when to step back. About seeing the difference between selfishness and self-preservation. My daughter's first steps on the field taught me as much as they taught her. She fell, she cried, she laughed, she stood up again. And in that, I saw myself. I saw my wife. I saw the truth of parenthood. We fall, we grow tired, we clash, we doubt ourselves, but we stand back up, not because it's easy, but because it matters. And sometimes love isn't about giving everything away. Sometimes it's about keeping enough of yourself intact so that your love can last. My daughter runs now with more confidence. She isn't a star player. She may never be. But she's learning joy, resilience, friendship, and we, as her parents, are learning alongside her learning that our strength as a family doesn't come from endless sacrifice, but from balance, from compromise, from holding each other up when we stumble. That's the real lesson. The one I'll carry with me long after the games end. Asterisk.